I think Square Enix has a very serious problem. Their business strategy, tying themselves with one of Sony PlayStation's major pillars, seems to have fallen short. In fact, not just fallen short, but created what I think is a huge chasm between they and their financial goals. Basically, they failed. Now, nobody wants to rejoice over this. This is something that is an unfortunate situation, but it's one of those situations that they brought upon themselves. And this also leans into overall PlayStation being the publisher in this case and the platform holder, its own admission when it was pretty much signaling to people that its pillars are dated and behind the competition. This one aspect in the way that they actually do things is actually quite weird at the end of the day. So before we jump any more into the video, we got to look at this PlayStation pillar. Because remember, when they looked at Activision and they looked at Blizzard and they looked at Xbox and saw where Xbox had the capability to bring their games to subscription, console, and PC, they concluded basically that their pillars are dated and behind the competition. And one of their major pillars, as we know it, is the fact that they actually leverage third-party exclusivity. Oh, what is this? Forspoken. Oh, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about that very soon, but we were focused on Final Fantasy. Again, you see what I did there? I know. It's a cheesy way to basically show that this particular paradigm and this notion continues to fail even much more. What's going on here? They banked on exclusivity deals. The exclusivity deals have not panned out, and to be very honest, I think right now the learning is actually very interesting for them. And we need to go ahead and look at a lot of pertinent aspects to this conversation. And very honestly, how some folk in the PlayStation community, in my opinion, don't necessarily care much to view what is going on right now from what I think is a much more objective perspective. And they keep on, or maybe they find themselves in a place where they need to run, defense for PlayStation or whatnot. It's kind of weird. I don't know what it is, but we'll go ahead and take a look at some of this stuff. So let's jump right in. Final Fantasy 16's much anticipated PC launch has thus far resulted in disappointing sales, continuing a troubling sales trend for the legendary franchise. Tech4Gamers has reported that since the release, they've only sold about 289,000 copies, and they were likely hoping for higher expectations. These sales numbers have not been verified by Square Enix nonetheless. I mean, there are ways that we can actually take a look at things. And however, just over 336,000 physical units sold in Japan during that period, which is basically the first week of launch. This was a dramatic fall off. So they're basically comparing that, this is actually about 100,000 units, or maybe slightly less. I mean, just do the subtraction here, less than the copies that they sold in terms of physical units in Japan. Final Fantasy 16 has a lot of problems, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tell you how much these, games that are going with this third-party exclusivity are in for a big shock or a big surprise if they actually do expect anything from, their sales. If they don't, then sure, they can maybe just enjoy exclusivity and take the money and whatnot. But if there are any expectations for profitability and any expectations for their brands to go further, then by all means, this is definitely something that they have to take a very good look at. To all of this, with Sony basically failing these companies, their own consoles, having these install bases, not being able to basically buy the game to a point where the exclusivity can look comfortable, bringing the games to PC seemed like the next best thing. But guess who went to PC on the very same, release window as Final Fantasy 16, God of War Ragnarok? I go ahead and I cite this document all the time, saying that this is probably why PlayStation is looking and saying, we can't stick with one of our pillars, which is pretty much third-party exclusivity. Our pillar that is actually sticking with the box is putting Microsoft in a position where they've gone away from the box and can now use that as part of their own business strategy, but they've added PC and they've added subscription. Do you believe that somebody told me this in a comment today? They said to me that what you say PlayStation is afraid of was a leak Sony wanted to get out, in order to stop the acquisition of Activision. And then they said about this document, you are being fooled by Sony, my dude. This person actually said that this document that Sony had in their own confidential, coffers that got leaked as a result of an unfortunate hack is Sony using it to fool us. This is why I say if you continue to stick with the old paradigm of how you think the console market should be, you will be lost and you will find yourself saying some of the craziest tinfoilery that I've ever heard. Can you imagine this? PlayStation orchestrated a hack. That's what this person is implying. They're implying that somewhere, somehow, PlayStation orchestrated that this hack would unveil this document that we have. Remember, I showed you guys the article just written a few hours ago by this person who said that PlayStation's continued dominance of the industry is only getting stronger and stronger, while this document that says that their own competition, PlayStation is writing internally saying that Microsoft's comprehensive ecosystem coupled with exclusivity creates greater dominance, meaning that they've already been dominated. And if Microsoft were to couple it with exclusivity, that dominance takes one more step up. Yet in the media and the press, they're writing an entirely different story. And this person wants me somehow to abandon my own eyes and even not only abandon what my eyes are seeing, but tell me that, oh, PlayStation is purposefully doing it to orchestrate me being fooled, or those of us who've seen this to be fooled. That's how bad it's gone. It's gotten to this point where now some of these folk, instead of holding PlayStation accountable, they feel the need to defend PlayStation. If you're a PlayStation fan and you're looking at what's going on in the industry, if none of this is concerning to you, then that's fine. I see a lot of people come on the channel, they'll tell me, well, most gamers don't care. I say, if they don't care, that's fine, but I don't care is not a good reason for for anything. And I don't care doesn't change the facts, but you can not care, that's okay. However, if you pay attention from an objective perspective, you'll realize that you need for PlayStation to go through this phase or crash and burn, or you need for them to go through this phase and come out on top. That's what you need. That's what competition does. Xbox had been hammered from the Xbox One days. In fact, they're still getting hammered. And somewhere, somehow, they outclassed PlayStation to the point where PlayStation pretty much openly said that they've been outclassed. Now that is a chess game of chess games that I want to see. I have someone that, I don't think they're an audience member anymore. I had to block them. And it's easier to actually block a lot of people because, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You actually, in good faith, ask them what's going on. But you find out that many of them, it's just a bad faith. They're angry at you. You've basically said something that probably bothered their belief system in this whole nonsense. And they can be objective. And they were talking about how Microsoft had no strategy at all. That their strategy is all over the place. And blah, blah, blah. While PlayStation has arranged and organized the entire strategy in front of the entire world, and people still have they still have the guts to say that there's no strategy here. In fact, if Microsoft actually by fluke got to the point where they dominated PlayStation, imagine if they had actually strategized what's going to happen to PlayStation. It's a great compliment you're giving even I wouldn't give Microsoft that level of a compliment or even all those accolades. So be very wary what you're saying in this regard. Which brings us to the other one that's Forspoken. Shout out to one of our audience members, Online Tuba. They sent me a comment. They literally came and said, "Hey man, did you know that Forspoken right now is a real thing on Xbox?" Even though it wasn't related to the video, they were like, "Oh, this is unrelated, but you might want to check and see that Forspoken has now showed up on the Xbox platform." I was quite surprised to see that. I was like, really? Now, granted, this game was always going to be coming, to Xbox. They had talked about it for a while, and to be very honest, I thought this was actually something very interesting. Yes, you guys have seen my spreadsheet where I organize my video ideas. I'm sure you guys are going, "Oh my gosh, well, yeah, how do you think, all those videos every day come out?" There's a little bit of that goes in between that. And so he pointed that out, and I said to myself, we need to take a look at this as well because we need to talk about this in this regard. This game was not a game that was well accepted. Just the reality. That's just the truth. It wasn't a game that received a lot of accolades. That's just the reality. That's just the truth. In fact, I have a copy of this game. I got it with my 6800 XT purchase. They bundled the game in with Saints Row and Sniper Elite 5. The only game that I feel is worth playing in that whole bundle was actually Sniper Elite 5, and it's the one I've played more extensively. Some people said that the Saints Row redo is good or whatnot. Hey, that's their own little cup of tea. But it shows that the risk is so high. With Forspoken, I say the risk is, it really does emphasize the risk, where you can make a game. If the game is not good, you're already toast. But then if the game is exclusive, then you're toast more because you can't even get goodwill from everybody else. Or if the game doesn't get accepted well, you're toast because you don't get goodwill from everybody, from other people who may want to at least dial in. I think goodwill and availability, even though there was a little bit of, I think deserved vitriol from the PS4 and the Xbox One community because this game was announced to come to those platforms and then got canceled. But the availability on the series and the series, S and X, and even the whatchamacallit, and the PS5 and PC being available to all platforms allowed for this game called Gotham Knights to at least sell about 3 million copies. Somebody found a little LinkedIn post where somebody who had worked on the marketing put, that the game that they were, working on had actually been able to clock, about 3 million copies. Now, this game, compared to what you would expect, that is not a strong sales point. And I'm sure the sales would have probably maybe gone a little higher since the game has gone on some deep discounts. They put it on Game Pass, got some money from it. But again, availability and being ahead of the market is a big deal. So this game would ideally have sold more than Forspoken. I mean, it is a better game than Forspoken. I mean, you can come and ask me how, and I'll tell you. Somebody told me today that the Jedi game was a better game than Gotham Knights. And I was like, well, you are talking to somebody who actually has like hours in both games. And so maybe for you, story-driven games and all, me for combat is basically where I'm going to, point out these two games and such, but different conversation at the end of the day. So what's going on right now is via Square Enix, we're getting a front row seat to seeing PlayStation's third-party exclusivity pillar fizzle away. And that's just the reality. Things are changing, guys. Things are changing. Talk to me in the comment section. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.